Hello and welcome to the Animation Kimmunication podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode contains heavy adult language and is not appropriate for young children. Can't.
Hi everyone, welcome to the new episode of Animation Kimmunication, except it's not new if you're listening to it when it happened already, but it's new to us, so welcome anyway. So I'm KP.
As of the posting and recording date, it is new.
Yeah, it's new because we're doing it right now in the present, time travel. Anyway, so if you're new, I'm KP as normal, or I Love Kim Possible a Lot. It's a stupid name. We've heard the jokes, and then I have my co-host Lauren as usual.
Yep. Hello. Hi. I live here.
She lives in my head. Okay.
Rent free.
So this week we have Kat back, I guess, or Monochromatic, good friend of mine who I would like to see again after COVID is over. You want to say hi, Kat?
Hello. I'm excited to be here and for COVID to be over.
Yes, both those things.
Here.
For people who've never heard of you before, what's the general spiel about what you do? We didn't watch the other episode.
So I'm a writer. I'm living here in LA, originally was to get my break in animation, and then I was like, what if I did a webcomic instead? But I can't draw, so instead I was like, what if I found artists who want to do a webcomic with me? So I'm currently doing that, and I have also dabbled a lot in fanfiction. And yeah. And also I am cool and friendly, and I love you all.
That's you can, and you can still do both. You can still do your webcomic and then also try to find someone to break in the Shining style. So,
that's true.
You're not limited. Unlimited possibilities here on this podcast that I made up. Okay, so we have a couple of news stories this week. We just did We just did a recent episode, so we don't have too many, mostly because we're in between weeks where things are happening, but there are a couple. Mm-hmm. Okay, Lauren, you want to go first?
So come on and slam, and welcome to the jam. We finally got the new Space Jam 2, a new Legacy trailer, and finally got to see, pretty much everything you would need to see in order to be fully convinced of this movie being way more successful than the first one, at least in the fronts of looking a lot better and LeBron James actually being able to act.
We'll see.
Oh my gosh.
He already had a history of doing voice acting with Warner Brothers Animation. So, he's already familiar with the stuff versus Michael Jordan, who was his only other experience before Space Jam was pretty much just the commercials, and that was about it. And
high quality
basically
talent.
The first Space Jam was one giant commercial full of commercials, a commercial for commercials. And at least this one, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's Ready Player One, but Warner Brothers. And I'm like, well, yes, but also no. It's because we got to see
That's an interesting comment. Why are they saying that?
It's because there's actually, in the trailer, we get to see that it's basically a huge kind of universal mashup of Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera properties, basically all joining up to so in the first movie you had the basketball game and you had a whole bunch of toons watching, right? So in this one, you're the whole audience is, because it's based in the internet, and by the internet we mean the internet as pertaining to whatever Warner Brothers characters that they can and properties that they could loop in from the internet, which would be we've seen cameos from, people are still trying to count how many faces are in there. There was Iron Giant that's shown up, which is funny because he showed up in
Iron
Ready
Giant.
He showed up in Ready Player One as well as a brief cameo. But he also shows up in this trailer. And then you also had Hanna-Barbera properties like the Flintstones and Scooby-Doo. And actually, it's funny. I have a theory that they just used the models from
Yeah, that's what they look
in the
like.
trailer. It's like, it's very blurry, but I have a feeling that's what they did. And then there was also, interestingly enough, very interesting live action properties that
Can I say my favorite one before you steal it from me?
Is it the Clockwork Orange?
Yeah, it's Clockwork.
So here's the irony: they'll ban Pepe Le Pew, but they'll let Clockwork Orange in as a cameo. Who is objectively worse?
Oh, it's not. Yeah, it's not even a contest. Like they,
So, but yeah, and then also you had Game of Thrones referenced in there as well. You had what was the Night? His name's the Night King, correct? He was in the background there as well.
I don't know. I didn't watch Game of Thrones. He's just the blue guy.
Yeah, so you had dragons, all the Durgans, but it's funny because as you see LeBron enter the universe that basically when he gets set down into the Looney Tunes world, he passes other worlds a la Kingdom Hearts style. So there's like a Game of Thrones planet. There is like a Hanna-Barbera planet, and then there's the Looney Tunes planet. So there's like and the another thing that people have been losing their minds over is that the Animaniacs showed up in the back as well. Well, I should say specifically the Warner siblings. So yeah,
someone spotted them or screenshotted them from the trailer. But yeah, I think that's the majority of them. And plus, like, I think Warner Brothers is just excited that people are excited to see, like, genuinely excited to see Looney Tunes characters again, where every time that happens, everyone's just like, like, whatever. Like, I know who Bugs Bunny is, but people are just like, nostalgia, Space Jam. I don't know. Do you think like Michael Jordan or Bill Murray will make a cameo or something?
I know Bill Murray was trending the same day that the Space Jam trailer was, and I know it's because everybody was saying, they would have lost in Space Jam 1 without Bill Murray's help. So everyone's like, get Bill Murray to cameo in Space Jam 2. Like, I can't confirm if that's going to happen. I mean, people are going to have their theories up until release. But
just CGI him. It's the same thing.
So yeah, it's fun. Also, it's kind of funny because later on he ended up, after the first Space Jam, he was in Osmosis Jones as like one of the only live action actors in it. But it was anyway, that was just kind of funny if they actually end up looping him in a la Osmosis Jones style, which would actually be pretty funny if they ended up referring to that movie as well in there. But
is that owned by Warner Brothers?
That's Warner Brothers Animation. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
But yeah, so anyway, the trailer looked like a lot of fun, and if I'm gonna be in the camp of, if you really sit down and watch Space Jam, the first one, without nostalgia goggles on, it's not a good movie, guys.
Oh yeah, it's so bad.
The people working on it knew it was a bad movie too, and they hated that it was a bad movie because they wanted to make it a good movie, but the wrong people were in charge and made it a bad movie.
Yeah, there's a famous story where I think either Mel Blanc or Chuck Jones was invited to a Space Jam party. I might have mentioned this in another episode.
Chuck Jones. It was Chuck Jones.
Okay.
He was invited to the Space Jam premiere party, and he was invited to make a speech. And so, and he ends up going up and saying, like, the state of animation going into the 90s, it's like, this is all falling apart. This isn't, like, it's lost its touch. And
oh my
like,
God, really?
Yeah, and then he left the party.
He had to be escorted out. No, he had to be escorted out.
Oh, wow.
So there you go.
I haven't seen it since I think I was a kid. So now I'm like, now I want to rewatch it and see with a critical perspective.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I know that the animators were basically put between a rock and a hard place when it came to working on the movie, because the people in charge were not, well, at least not everybody, but just some figureheads had never worked in animation before. Didn't know how to work with animators.
Gee, I could never tell.
And they were saying, like they didn't understand the concept of green screening either. So they're like, this will be a shot where this character crosses in front of Michael, and they're like, you do realize we can't do that. That's not how it works. And he's like, oh sure, you just like green screen. They're like, that's not how green screen works either.
That reminds me when I was little and my dad didn't know how animation worked, and I asked him how they like do Space Jam or Looney Tunes Back in Action, where they have cartoon characters interacting with the people, and he's like, oh, they manually cut holes in the film and then they put the characters.
No. Like,
no, father, that is not how that works. He tries his best, but I think it's fair to say I've surpassed him in my own field, I hope.
But yeah, anyway, sorry, we're going on about Space Jam. You had your other headline that you wanted.
Oh yeah, my other stupid headline. So the other stupid headline where I'm kind of like about, if you guys listened to one of the first episodes, or probably the 15th or something like that, I've talked about my mixed feelings dealing with John Delancey at cons. If you don't know who he is, he played Q in Star Trek and Discord of My Little Pony, and he is grumpy sometimes, and it gets complicated. Anyway, versus when I was dealing with Christy Carlson Romano, she remembered everything. She was just she was on it.
Really sweet.
Yeah. And then John's like, how did I get here? What's the My Little Pony? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but only a little bit, which is the sad thing. So anyway, so he just got announced to be returning for Picard, and if you don't know what Picard is, I don't blame you. It's basically, it's a big thing. It's like they're doing a series with Patrick Stewart again, and they got they're slowly getting the Next Generation cast back in it over the course. It's
basically Next Generation 2 Electric Boogaloo at this point.
Yeah, essentially. So I haven't watched it. I just know it's a thing, and I know people have been asking if John is going to come back as Q, and then it's announced today that he is, or it was already shot or something. So, if you care about Star Trek, and if you care about Q, will I be watching it? Probably not, but, I guess we'll see what happens. It'll be weird to see, regular...
I mean, a character like Q is kind of because he did come early enough that he preceded characters like the fourth wall breaking, characters like Genie and stuff like that going forward,
you mean,
right?
yeah, okay, yeah, that's true.
So I mean, I'm talking about if people don't know who Q is, it's Q is basically a huge inspirational figure for characters like that bent the rules of time, space, and pop culture references.
Yeah.
So
let's see, there was a thing, but I'm kind of curious because most of the time Acting John is younger Acting John, so I can separate my brain can separate it, but and he doesn't really do on camera stuff these days, except with rare exceptions that I think he was in Torchwood one time or something, which is a Doctor Who spinoff, I think. Anyway,
with David Tennant.
yeah, things I don't know. So him acting with Patrick Stewart as regular old John Delancey, that stares back at me at the panel, is gonna be a little weird, but I'm not gonna think about it too much because thinking is hard.
Yeah. Anyway,
I guess
that's the takeaway. People always assume when John was in Lower Decks or whatever, the animated show, people are like, oh, did you watch that? And I'm just no, I can't. It's a lot of work emotionally, and with COVID and stuff, it's hard to get excited about someone who recognizes you and that's it,
Speaking of which, I don't know if I ever told you that I've been mistaken as a crew member for Lower Decks. Purely, I think it's because people saw my portfolio and they saw the the character test that I did, but I'm like, no, I don't work on the show. but I'm flattered that you think I do.
Yeah, on Lauren's portfolio.
At least if I look professional enough, right?
yeah. On Lauren's professional portfolio, she has a original design for a pre-established Star Trek character as an animated guy. So, I would just own it.
Taking a pre-existing alien species from Star Trek and incorporating it into the show style.
Yeah,
with a new character in person, like an actual character and personality. I think the only thing I hadn't nailed down was the name, but that's about it.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah, I'm trying to work on my portfolio mostly full time at this point. So, I worked on it for like 6 or 7 hours. Man, art's hard. Like I'm determined to get it done before COVID or when COVID ends. So like maybe I can like get in somewhere, but art is hard, like.
Yeah, and the thing is you got to produce things at a very quick speed when it comes to producing stuff for like, especially for like shows. You gotta be quick.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of shaking the rust off the muscles.
Yeah. Like I'm pretty good at character design, but like I gotta get better at doing animatics, especially referencing people without like reference in your face. I gotta repractice that because I haven't done life drawing since COVID started. So.
I think there's even some like online resources where they'll do like live streams of.
Oh yeah. There's
drawing.
tons of YouTube. For people who want to learn life drawing but do not like money. There's tons of like time life drawings on YouTube. Clothed people and unclothed people, and that's not a creepy thing. That's a artistic studying how the body moves and shit. So don't be creepy. But yeah. But I have a lot of life drawing hours. It's just I haven't done. I have too many. Anyway, okay, let's talk about the thing. So Kat's here because we're gonna talk about being good creators and just some general etiquette for producing content online and maybe like dealing with problematic situations where you can't help, where someone projects or has parasocial relationships with YouTubers and fun things like that. So this is kind of just going to be like a long conversation. Like we don't have like I don't have a bullet point structure. So if you like long conversations, then this is your episode. If not, then you can watch another one where we interview someone else and ask them questions.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, whatever. No pressure. So Kat, like, what are things that you try to consider when you're interacting with your fan base online, or like what are some general like etiquette rules and things, I don't know, that you like to keep in mind when you're using the internets?
Well, I think it really depends on what social media you're using. Especially in like where you're interacting with people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will definitely act very differently on Tumblr, for example, than I would on Twitter.
That's fair.
Or on Instagram.
How does the community in fanfiction like work? Is it toxic? Is it like depends where you go kind of places?
Well, actually, fanfiction is a very interesting community. For those who don't know, fanfiction is the My Little Pony's kind of like designated fanfiction website.
Yeah,
kind of like you have Archive of Our Own, you have fanfiction.net, and the thing about fanfiction, which is genuinely really good, and I wish more fanfiction websites applied it, is that unlike, for example, AO3, it's not an archive. This is really meant to be like a place where authors can like be and interact and post blogs. It's meant to foster a community. But obviously the issue is like with any community, there's like ups and downs. An upside of that is obviously, you interact with a lot of your fans. People feel much more compelled to comment, which for writers is like amazing. But also, like in any community, you have, toxic wars, and you have like, cliques, and something that happens in specifically that community is that it's very competitive. Mm-hmm. Although that's like an entirely different conversation about My Little Pony fandom. But
I just think of like horror stories where like people that write My Little Pony fan fiction like get egos because their fan fiction like people are cosplaying it, or people are, doing something online with it, and they're just like, look at me, I define the fandom. But then if you go outside the fandom, no one cares. So,
it's the effect of, like, when you think about the skit from SNL years ago when they did High School Musical 4 or whatever, and Troy Bolton goes back to graduation. He tells everybody, we're, as far as I can tell, we're the only singing high school in America. And nobody sings when you go to college. Everybody will stare at you. Everyone will laugh at you. Nobody cares.
It's definitely, it's like, so the thing is, but I mean, this would go into a bigger conversation on fanfiction, which is that fanfiction is a great training ground.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, like, fanfiction, again, is a community where people are really reactive. So you do get feedback as a writer. Sure, like, it still is the internet, so they're ruthless sometimes. Mm-hmm. But you learn. Mm-hmm. Although I think the issues that I have seen, like, going back to toxicity, as KP said, that stems from something that you can see in every social media, mm-hmm. which is, it fosters competitiveness. It fosters, comparing yourself with every other creator, mm-hmm. Comparing numbers, etc., etc., etc. And as far as your audience goes, it's interesting. Like, I don't know. I can't try to figure out how I'm going to say my point.
It's okay. Take your time.
It's more like it's. I guess then we would have to talk about what stan culture is.
Mm.
Because, and obviously it is, the kind of content that you foster will determine what kind of audience you have.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like, I imagine, like, the more grimdark fan fictions, you get some people that, like, true crime kind of things, just as an example, or if you have something light and fluffy, then, you have a lot of shippers that you have to deal with who ship things. So,
yeah, but it's kind of also, so this is kind of like, I genuinely think this applies to anything, but it's kind of like, whether you like it or not, you're always selling a narrative, mm-hmm. even if you don't mean to, right? So based on how you act, not exactly, well, even your content to some extent, like, you could be selling messages that you don't even realize you're selling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But based on how you act, your audience will determine how they act, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, leading by example.
Exactly, and it's kind of like, I mean, so it's really interesting, but because now I was like, oh, I wanted to give an example, but then I was like, oh, but those fans get super angry, and I was like, now I don't know if I want to mention it. Which is kind of like the issue with fandom culture.
Is that you can't even take criticism
exactly
of their own behavior, and that's a whole other can of worms, is saying how
I can
fan culture becomes like a mob mentality very quickly if it's not checked.
I have a side story that I can tell if Kat wants me to kind of think about her point that kind of reflects this, but like in a way that's not calling. I mean, it's about an experience with an individual that I've had, but I'm not going to, like, mention who it is. You'll just probably... Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so are you good with that, Kat? Do you want me to tell that what you think?
I mean, this is a conversation between all of us, so...
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to be rude and be like, it's my podcast. I'm going to trick people to listen while I talk about random incoherent thoughts because I can't write things down. Anyway, my general attitude with the pony fandom fanfic. I was gonna be like, we've been talking about fan fiction. I was gonna be like pony fan fiction. I'm like, no, wait, that's not right. So my general attitude with the pony fandom, probably like from 2017-ish on, is kind of it's had a bittersweet feeling to me. Like, I still love doing pony cons, and I will do pony cons if I, number one, feel like I'm safe, and that requires, untoxic people to be there, and if they are going to cause trouble, then they're kicked out of the con. Shout out to Everfree, which is always a good con where I feel safe. Anyway, but I'm not going to put myself in situations where people are going to believe everything they hear on 4chan or what the fuck ever, and, you know, say bad things or try to start trouble or, like, you know, put genitalia on products that have my OC on it, you know, fun things like that I have to deal with. So but at the same time, conventions bring out, like, really good people who, you know, you can tell that they're more of the genuine type, if that makes sense too. You know, they really enjoy your work. They're super excited that they have a chance to meet you in person, and they just want to.
They're actually there to have a good time.
Yeah, they're there to not only that, but they're there to show their appreciation to, you know, people that are actively making content too. You know,
Exactly.
you know, and that's the kind of thing when, you know, doing premieres are fun, because then you have, like, this content premiere, or maybe, I don't know, do authors at PonyCons, they, like, read, like, a new chapter of their fic at a panel or something? Like, is that, like, a thing?
No, but in my case, I'll just grab a book and grab a room and do it anyway.
Okay, because that, like, you know, like, new chapter, you know, you'll hear it first at this con. I figured if it was a popular fan fiction, that might be, like, a thing people would like. Anyway, fun times. So, my point being is, so my favorite story is, and I'll talk about my experience with PonyCons in general, probably at another point, on another place, but, I've had some mixed experiences, same problem, where conventions, believe what they've heard on the internet, and I'm like, here's the facts, you know, here are the hard facts. They're just like, well, we just want to go by the perception of what's happening, and I'm just like, okay, well, you're in a fandom full of honesty and magic and kindness, and, like, what are you doing, friendo? Like, it's kind of that perpetuation, specifically in the pony fandom, but in other fandoms too, where they want to have this perception of an obviously, like, nice, kind, you know, social kind of, like, connection, I guess. And then in practice, they don't really keep it as much if it's not convenient. So I guess the long story of this is, so I had an interaction with an individual, and this was referenced in my YouTube video, where it's someone who also makes content. I will not name the person, but someone who also makes content, and because he or she has, I'm just gonna say he because it's easier, but anyway, because he has a relatively positive outlook and hasn't had to deal with, like, PR storms or anything bad, they believe that there's no negative, and if there is negative, it's someone else's fault. And they kind of live in this perception that, you know, this is my fandom, this is my space, like, everyone's great here, like, you know, no one can do wrong kind of thing. And they kind of deny reality too, which I don't think is healthy.
Yeah.
You know, and it just, like, it just makes me sick to think about, like, I mean, that conversation in general was not a fun conversation. I cried after. But essentially, there's also the problem of thinking your space or your fandom is too, or even your YouTube audience, whatever you have, is positive and only positive, and being naive enough to think that people, not even, like, are going to try to date you or something, or hit on you, or show you feed pictures, or whatever it is, but also people that are going to, you know, try to get close to you, or do something for you as a means of validation for themselves, or, you know, to try to get some kind of attention somehow. And that's something that I've had to kind of learn hard lessons about, as far as, you know, not everyone that, you know, is passionate about animation and art, like, you know, wants to positively contribute, and some people are in it for the ego, or some people are in it to feel that validation. And I think that's just an incredibly unhealthy way of looking at it. And you know, and it's great that you haven't had negative experiences with people, and it's great that, you know, you don't have conventions discriminating against you because of 4chan bullshit that you can disprove, but it doesn't matter. but also denying that it doesn't exist is not the answer either. So that's all I was gonna say right now. Did you have another jumping off point, Kat?
Well, ultimately, so the thing is, this kind of discussion has like a ton of avenues, because we could go into like social media culture, which I believe is like really toxic, and because fandoms are so much in social media, it makes fandoms toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a really important point is, at least as a content creator, recognizing what is good faith and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Because sure, you'll have like, okay, and obviously this is a point where it kind of like comes to like, it also depends on your audience. Like, I have a very different relationship with my audience than I'm sure Taylor Swift has with her bajillion Swifties, right?
Is that what they're called? Swifties?
Swifties?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Those are the little monsters, and, you know, I think Swifties are Taylor Swift.
You and your kids with your Swifties, and, you know, it sounds like a drug or something.
And then there's the Beliebers of Justin Bieber. I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Smokes a candy cigarette. I haven't heard that term in years.
No, and that's always my. There was one comment every time I do collab. I always complain that like someone's just like, oh my god, I haven't heard about KP in forever. And then my favorite one, my most defeating one, is someone posted a Star Wars GIF, and that like it was like at Obi-Wan. It's like, oh, I love Kim Possible a lot. That's not a name I've heard in a long time. You know. Anyway, this is off topic, but go ahead, Kat.
Hold on. What was I saying? Oh, right. Okay. So it's kind of like, oh my god. Okay. So I'm gonna be corny, and I'm gonna quote that Spider-Man quote that like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like, at the end of the day, if you are a creator of any kind, you do hold some power or some control.
Influence, I guess we could say.
Influence, exactly, thank you. Influence over your audience. And then I think a big thing is, like, trying to find the balance between that. Because earlier you mentioned parasocial relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we have these things where, like, and this is true, a lot of audiences feel entitled to the content they produce. Or rather, they consume.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So at one point, like, oh, creator did this decision, what the hell, like, you know, and they feel like, oh, they ruined my show, that was mine. And I think finding that balance is the key to being a good creator, because your content is yours.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to, like, you know, it also doesn't mean that, you know, you have to be like, no, you know, to heck with my audience or whatever. Like, it's just finding, like, how you can have a productive relationship with your audience.
Right.
I don't know if I'm repeating myself a lot, but...
No, you're fine. You're fine. It's a discussion, so it's gonna be a little non-linear and a little stuttery. I stutter a lot, generally, especially I'm on East Coast, and we usually record these on PST time, so I'm staying up relatively late for KP, and then I'm tired and I stutter more than usual. The things I do for you people, you two people that are listening, I know it's more than that, but I like to be self-defeatist.
But yeah, and then another thing is, I forgot my point. Hold on. What was my point?
Social media, parasocial relationships.
Oh, parasocial relationships.
Yeah.
So I guess if we want to talk about that, we need to establish, like, we have to establish the size of an audience.
And probably also define that word for people who don't know what that means.
All right. So a parasocial relationship, does anybody else want to define it, or do we?
You're the writer. Go for it.
Oh, basically, a parasocial relationship is when you consume a lot of content from a creator, so you basically form a relationship with them because you know who they are, you know what they like, you know what they think about, so basically they're like your friend. And you kind of realize, like, the line between, no, this is a person who is not your friend, they are just a content creator, kind of gets blurred.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people end up, like, kind of, you know, falling into really toxic relationships with somebody that, like, does not know who they are, And I'm trying to say this in a way that isn't like, oof, but they don't have to know who you are, if that makes sense. Like, the problem with parasocial relationships is when you feel like the creator owes you something because you've been interacting with them.
Right.
Or because you consume their content, right?
Yeah, and in that regard, it's, well, I guess parasocial, I mean, I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong on this, the whole, the term parasocial, it sounds like parasitic social. So it's like, it's a one-sided thing. Only one person is, reaping what the other person sowed and is asking for more and is expecting more of the other person, even though that other person most likely doesn't know them, who they are.
Yeah.
And just like, that's what's like, you took everything from me. I don't even know who you are.
You were my brother, Etiquette. Anyway, continue.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and, like, it's interesting because when you describe it like that, you kind of make creators sound like, it's kind of like, it's easy to be like, oh, creators are so selfish, we're giving them our time. And it's true, like, in the same way that creators are not entitled to viewers, neither are viewers entitled to creators, right? Mm-hmm. So I definitely think a relationship has to be a really healthy audience and creator relationship is one where both sides understand that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which isn't to say that you can't eventually foster a relationship with them, but it's something that, it's kind of like it either has to happen naturally or you just, you have to vibe with them, you vibe. And sometimes it happens.
And it's funny because I guess you guys probably heard about, it was a very, very short-lived, but it was like a loud bang and then it just went out, was the whole thing about Dan Avidan. I know this is probably a hot topic still for some people to discuss, but it did happen like a week and a half ago at this point.
Oh yeah.
And it's and
do you want to give people like the TLDR of that?
Yeah, so basically there were accusations of Dan Avidan from Game Grumps of being basically a pedophile and a sexual predator. With a fake story, proven later fake, to be going around about him having a relationship with this girl that he met when she was just about to turn 18, and then he had like a sexual relationship when she turned 22. It turns out the whole thing was fabricated, but people jumped immediately on the train, especially because the story was generated and put up in a subreddit that is known to basically circulate Game Grumps hate posts. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So many people took out of context screenshots of messages that nobody even could tell who the messages were being sent to, who they were from, and they took, I guess what it turned out to be was an old Snapchat video from the Ninja Sex Party Snapchat, which was sent to everybody, and it was supposed to be like an in-character thing. And they used that as, quote, evidence of him sending a video to the supposed girl. Now, this all happened, and people started immediately jumping on the bandwagon of, he is a predator, he is a pedophile, this and that, and this and that. And meanwhile, I'm sitting back going, look, the accusation sounds really bad, but I'm like looking at this evidence and I'm starting to try and correct people going, this is very little evidence to go off of if this is even real. Mm-hmm. But immediately the people that wanted to launch on this were like going, oh, that means you're just saying that the victim's a liar. And it's like, no, I'm staying in the neutral ground of like, literally, where's the evidence? We need more before we can confirm anything. And I remember a few followers dropped off because I'm like, I don't know if it was because I was going and saying, we have to wait for more evidence. Literally, that's what I was saying. And I'm like, that's the most neutral stance you can take. But people were immediately jumping on the bandwagon of saying he's instantly guilty. And that's either we're going, oh, he's completely innocent, which we all know if you have listened to his, he's kind of rambled on about how he was not a good partner in the past for other people. And he admitted he did some shitty stuff in the past. But he's trying to move on from all that, trying to grow and not repeat those mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And people seem to forget that he's brought this up a number of times.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
So it's like, and so, but they still think he's like completely forgotten about this stuff. Like, no, he probably lives with it every day in his head. It's not like it's like he has to make the deliberate choice to make sure that he is trying to do better. You don't know. So it's like,
Oh, go ahead.
But the whole thing was it brought up in the debate of parasocial relationships. Now, that was an important discussion to have, and it just happened to be brought up with false accusations. But it did highlight the issue of parasocial relationships between fans and creators, and because they said that she was that the fake girl in the story was a fan, and they're saying, creators should, and then it brought up the whole other argument of creators should never be with their fans. There's a power imbalance there, and I'm like thinking, who's to say that people can't have relationships? Isn't it kind of backwards to say, you can't have this kind of relationship, and then you're saying you're saying parasocial relationships. Aren't you having one by controlling how they live their lives? So it was a whole mess of things, but I think it was a very important discussion to have for a lot of people. Even though the story ended up being fake, it did trigger a lot of actually really good discussion about this very topic. So
Well, you think people would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies? Anyway, go ahead.
What a concept.
But yeah, it's something you have to be aware of, like, because there isn't power imbalance. Like, it's true at the beginning, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the creator has to be aware of that, and so does the audience. But I genuinely think, I know I've said it 50 times, but social media, and especially Twitter, does not give room for the nuance that these kinds of things need.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of relationship, because I don't know, I could do an entire podcast on why Twitter
why Twitter's a hot mess.
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing is, you as a creator, you have to dictate how people interact with you and on what tone they interact with you.
Mm-hmm.
That will always be the defining factor.
You got to set boundaries. Number one, set boundaries.
Because if you set them, people will respect them eventually, and people who don't respect them, you can be like, hey, here are my boundaries, you're more respecting them, goodbye. I lost my point. But basically, yes, you have to, it's a two-way street. Which in a big part, yeah, the content creator has more to do, a little bit more and be more aware.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, at the end of the day, a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
Easy street? No, that's not the right one.
It takes two to tango.
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there's just as much responsibility for both parties involved. So it's between creator and audience. Like, you can't, of course you can't control one or the other fully, but you can, like you said, influence, be a source of influence. So as a creator, you should be a proper influence and be able to be like, hey, set the boundaries for yourself and for those within your fandom as well.
Don't do an illegal.
Yeah, so it's like basically try to set the precedent, but then at the same time, the fandom needs to also get their shit together because it's like there has to be a level of maturity put into place, which I know sometimes it's asking a lot depending on the realm. For the most part, though, it's like it is a lot of taking things personally into your own hands to be like, I will actively be a better person, rather than stoop to low levels to when interacting with other fans or anything like that, or interacting with the creator. It's like, just make the active choice to be just a decent person. It really isn't that much to ask, and yet people act like it is.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, go.
Oh yeah, I was just also going to comment too that I think when you also have a certain outlook where when you're a creator, people expect you to kind of be forgiving and be kind and like not a little bit to an overextension, if that makes any sense. Like, they can't be mad at me because they're just a nice person kind of thing. Like, they're a little bit blindsided in that regard. So I am known sometimes, well, a lot of times, to kind of not take people's shit. And not in a mean way, but just in a way, if someone's like bullshitting me or if someone's lying and I know they're lying, I'll just be like, hey, stop lying. I will not be political about it. I'll be like, hey, this is, bad, or this is toxic. And I've had to deal with it not as much anymore, but just like in the general sense of, having my boundaries being respected is a big one. Making sure, people on the team are able to commit to things, and also make sure there's clear communication going on in all regards. But I think also people can be a little bit intimidated by that, and you're in a different environment when you're talking to someone as a fan versus as a collaborator, or in that regard too.
Yeah,
and I don't think
definitely.
people really think about that much as well, especially because I mean, not anymore. We use job sites now, but like in the past, I would hire people through the I say hire, but I would recruit people for my team on the YouTube channel. I just put out a Google Doc application. And I realized in hindsight that was probably a bad idea, not because I didn't get some good people that way. I did, obviously, but at the same time, there's a higher chance of people expecting expectations that I can't really deliver because they're already consuming the content a lot, and they're already aware, and they already and it's hard, especially for people who are not the best at social skills, to kind of develop and understand those boundaries.
Yeah,
that's it.
I had a point based on what we were saying earlier about Dan Avidan. Hold on. So you mentioned that like some people unfollow you, right? After you said like let's wait. Okay, so that kind of brings into another conversation in which I feel like we've strayed away from the topic of how to be a good content creator. We just started talking about social media relationships.
I guess. Well, it's
in a way it is
both.
a segue into that very same topic, because it's a branch of how to be a good creator, because it's almost like a cause and effect kind of thing when you think about it.
And so what I was gonna say is that it feels like there's like three issues, which people treat celebrities as not people. Because I remember, especially when the Dan Avidan thing happened, I remember seeing all of these posts that were like, "Oh, well, at least Markiplier would never do this," and it's kind of like,
I saw those too.
It's like you shouldn't be putting Markiplier on a pedestal like you put.
It's like, look, I can
Dan
hope the
Avidan.
same thing, but I know for a fact that they're all human and they all make mistakes. Like, I
Exactly.
know for a fact I could never put any of them. Like, I love and respect them all, but I know for a fact I could never put them on a pedestal. It's just like, because again, you're only setting yourself up to be disappointed if you do that. Just see them as people. They're people that are on the internet, and you happen to see them every day. And if you watch their videos every day, but they are more accessible in a way than regular. Than, I wouldn't say regular, but than
Old school
like your standard
maybe.
your standard celebrity.
Yeah.
So it does feel like more of a personal thing, because they are real. You feel like they are real people, and there's more of that connection there, which makes the separation that much harder to discern between fandoms and creators.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And there's also kind of like the fact that, well, like you said earlier, there's a mob mentality. People don't. So going back to the thing, And so going back to the idea about victims, right? Because they said, oh, so then you're saying that the victim is a liar. No, you're not saying that.
No. It's just...
And there is reason to think, okay, for now I'm going to believe the victim. But it's like more and more people don't seek evidence, don't seek sources, don't seek, like, it's okay to think, okay, I'm really upset.
Sorry.
It's okay to have an initial reaction and an initial thought, but as long as you can follow through and go, wait, critical thinking time, do we have enough evidence of this even being a reality?
Right.
And so it's just like, again, what triggered me the most about the whole situation was that where more people were like, oh, but he's a guy, so more likely he did it because we've seen too many guy creators do that. Exactly. And I'm like, do you guys remember what frickin' Amber Heard did to Johnny Depp? She cried and claimed victim of being a victim of abuse from Johnny Depp, when it actually was the other way around. And more evidence came about that Johnny was the one being abused. And it was coming up even in physical evidence, like he was beaten and bruised and was missing teeth. And it was that whole thing. Like, literally, I'm like, and still people believed her.
Yeah.
Because it made me sick to my stomach thinking, like, okay, and that's why it's like, always seek to find evidence first. Mm-hmm. You need more to have a foundation for a solid argument than just hearsay and like one or two pieces of possibly forged evidence.
I have a segue to go into this, and then we'll and then we'll start talking about just like other maybe good etiquette practices as far as being a creator and like encouraging fans without, again, giving into that the parasocial relationship in a way, and that kind of thing. Okay, so my segue is when I had to deal with my fun time, hate mob time. As Lauren said, and I hate that I have to start every fucking pony friendship that I had is like, hey, I know you heard about me from the bad shit, but it wasn't true. TLDR. And then people were like, oh, wow, it wasn't true. And I'm sure, I think, Kat, you even mentioned like that's how you first heard about me is through the bad stuff, which is always great. And then I don't know. I probably did that with you, Lauren. I don't remember, but maybe at some point.
No, we actually because I think because I'd been following your stuff for a while, but I was not aware of the drama. So
yeah,
I was kind of like a casual. Was it like a casual enjoyer of KP content? So, but I wasn't heavily involved, and so when I first met you, I had no idea of any of that going on. So I was just like, hey, you're cool. Holy crap, wait, I know you. You make the videos. You want to talk to me? You're cool. And then it's like, okay, you want to start a podcast? What, with me? Okay.
Like I'm a nice person or something.
So literally that's how it went down at
essentially.
The last BronyCon, no less. So.
I was like, oh, you have a SAG thing? That sounds neat. I'm gonna move to LA. Let's be friends. But it's like the whole thing about finding evidence is just like, I don't think people like talking about the Reddit stuff. Like, I don't think people realize that a lot of times the evidence is like coming from places like 4chan where or places like Reddit or people, and people are lying to get the attention. And, they take it at face value because they assume it's true if it's trending or a lot of people are talking about it, things like that. And they really don't bother to wait and do the things we've been talking about to understand if the thing that is happening is actually happening. And, it was really frustrating and it really hurt like my feelings, among other things, when people would go on Twitter and when bad stuff was happening, they would be like, oh, I used to enjoy KP, but now she's a demon, and like, going into posts about how shitty of a person I was, or things like, I have a KP autograph, I'm gonna flush it down the toilet.
That's exactly how it goes too. It's like the moment anything like is presented as contradictory to what people have seen of you. And it's like the moment a small little thing, and it's just like, oh, now I'm going to destroy my merch, which is also what happened with the Dan Avidan thing. And somebody said, oh, I smashed my NSP pin with a brick. It felt so good. I'm like, I'm thinking, ooh, so those people that destroyed their stuff within a day of the whole thing coming about, and then I think it was maybe a day and a half after that broke, then the person who created the story went to the Reddit or the subreddit and they admitted it was all a lie. I'm like,
Oh, God. Yeah, and I mean, not to get too political, but it's like a similar thing with the anti-vaxxers who are just like, oh, man, I don't believe science because I saw this thing on Facebook. And I'm like, isn't it good that you don't have to live with polio? Do you ever think about that? That would suck. So, it's just like levels of stupidity, and that
wasn't polio coming back for a brief second because of how many people refused to vaccinate their kids?
I don't know, but
there was, I think, a brief period of
I hope not.
A disease
polio
that was coming back because people weren't vaccinating. Yeah,
I'm like, here's a newsflash, guys. Vaccines, you need to keep having vaccines because guess what? Those illnesses mutate, so you need to have new vaccines. So that's why they say get them every few years or whatnot, because guess what? That's biology. They evolve to adapt and survive in different changing environments and bodies. Then
I give a line about what is humanity becoming, where all these diseases are evolving, and we have to keep up with it. And then we have these super diseases, and the sun is global warming and all this stuff. But this is not the depressing podcast, so we won't talk about that kind of thing.
Anyway, back to creators.
Back to creators. Go ahead.
One last thing before we finish this topic, but this kind of reminded me of this one thing on Tumblr. I don't remember what the article was about, but it was somebody saying, oh, X, Y, and Z did X, Y, Z, FN, whatever. And they had links, sources, quote unquote. And then a lot of people I noticed reblogged it being like, oh my God, I knew it. This is terrible. And I remember there was somebody who said did you look at the sources? They were like, I mean, no, but it's source. So, it's good. And then if you clicked on the links, it was Rickroll videos.
Oh.
So it kind of shows how people don't, I guess, more and more we are, or rather less and less are we doing our due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
As consumers.
As skeptical consumers.
As skeptical consumers, but I think that goes both from the creator side to the reader side, and the idea that the fact that the internet can be intensely personal and intensely impersonal at the same time. So you forget that people are people. And I was going to finish my metaphor really smartly, and I completely lost my train of thought. But basically, yeah. The internet smarter.
Smart
I'm
time. I write words. Okay, yeah, I have some more not analogies, but some more side stories to talk about before we just we hopefully do some more simple discussion, but this is fine anyway. So when people were there was a lot of ways I could have minimized my bad things, mostly by not responding to it, as well as when I apologized people assumed that was me admitting guilt when I just people. It felt like the only thing I could do just to make the harassment stop, and I wasn't or at least minimize it a little bit. And I was very upset when that video did well. It's obviously not online anymore, but anyway, but I expect, in some regards in the pony community, some of the gatekeepers, I feel are conventions and conventions head and conventions, ideally doing the right thing, but at the same token, conventions are also a business, and they also have to keep in mind PR. And when there were conventions where I had conversations with them, and a lot of them were either oh, well, I don't feel like anything's changed, or maybe nothing has changed. And I'm just like, what sources are you looking at? And they would straight up admit that their reasoning for not doing X is because they heard a thing the one time. And let me make this clear too. I do not care. Like, this was obviously not conveyed in text very well, but I do not care about being a guest or being a community guest or what the fuck ever. I don't, like, it's not about that. It's about not discriminating people against, like, bullshit reasons, essentially. And, I'm not, like, for people who don't really know me that well, I'm not just like, oh, don't you know who I am? I love Kim Possible a lot. I always have to be a guest, and I always have to have 7 panels, and I always have to, get my feet rubbed during the panels. I don't know, whatever, what the fuck ever. So, like, it's just I think it's a matter of principle. And people, when I slammed BronyCon, I was like, hey, this isn't cool. People who didn't do their research the first time, the second time they were just like, oh, she's just mad because she's entitled, or she's just mad because she didn't get what she wanted and she's throwing fit on the internet. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm holding them accountable for not fixing their mistakes, for basically letting bad 4chan bullshit influence, decisions that it shouldn't influence, I guess, too. And I feel like, conventions should have some sort of, moral standard too, especially in the pony fandom, where it's all about morality and doing the right thing and all that stuff. So was like the only other thing I could have done is was being more direct behind the scenes and basically saying like, oh, well, I'm gonna make a statement about this. Can we fix this? Can we fix this or not? But then that would have maybe come off as a threat, so I don't know, whatever. But I guess at the end of the day, too, like, it goes to everyone. And it goes, especially when you have, like, you're a community figurehead, too. Not only you're making content, but people, like, you're the ranch leader, as they call it, or, you're the person who, runs a specific community. I feel like that's even more responsibility for you to, look out for people who are going through things like that and not take everything at face value and not discriminate against people. And I'm disappointed by the lack of that sometimes, just in general online spaces. But that's all I wanted to say right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I guess we can move on to something lighter. So what do you guys think are good, positive ways to interact with fans that, also don't encourage parasocial relationships, but also make, like, maybe a fan specifically feel like, if they did fan art, that their fan art is valued and you saw it and you thought that was cool, or, even in person, like, how do you kind of honor fans without giving them the wrong idea, I guess.
I think as long as you can I know it's always hard to gauge a person online, especially based off of, people can be a persona online and it may not really be them 100%. That I guess it's just use your discretion, but I think as long as you feel cool about it and the artist feels cool about it, sometimes even maybe asking them, is it okay, if they're open to DMs, like, is it okay if I share your art or something, or retweet it? Also, I guess in general, maybe just make sure that if a person has permissions on their bio on their account, saying, if, it's a quote retweets are not allowed, or you can do quote retweets, it's as long as you can, as there's some way that you can retweet, share somebody's art, acknowledge that, they're like, this is awesome, thank you so much for making this, or, keep up the amazing work. Because it's like, it shows you're paying attention to the people who follow you. Mm-hmm. And it's a nod saying, I know you're there, I see you, and you're awesome. Yeah. So, without being overbearing. And I think that's another thing is when I think about, I even think about the handful of interactions I've had with content creators and YouTubers and stuff, like and even just in general internet personalities, is that they will ask if you're in person, they'll be like, is it okay if I put my arm around you for a picture?
Oh yeah, those are always the gems that they're just like,
yeah, because it's always asking permission, because I know not everybody is comfortable with that, and I think I give major brownie points to people who respect fan space, because they may not be comfortable with that, and I think that they're awesome that they ask anyway. So, I mean, I always go, like, if somebody asks, is it okay if we take a picture like this? And I go, yeah, sure. Like, I mean, and that's in the rare occasion if anybody recognizes me, and it's usually at a BronyCon. But,
yeah, well, maybe after COVID, someone will be like, oh, it's Lauren from the KP podcast.
I'll show up to a Lupon convention, and probably, if there's anime convention, if there's a Lupon gathering, maybe. But,
I think it basically boils down to respect. Like, that's the biggest thing, like, having a mutual respect. If you respect the person with you, it is very noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And, like Lauren said, like, having, I guess what I always say is, if you are authentic,
Mm-hmm.
people will notice. Even if it's a small gesture, it will be acknowledged. Like, as a content creator, like, as you said, doing, like, acknowledging that, like, hey, thank you so much. And just really just being authentic and being respectful, and if you start every interaction like that, it'll usually like go well. Well, that's not true. I shouldn't say that.
I was gonna say, you can balance that. Of course, be genuine, but also use your discretion, because let's just say I'm in general, I just am a warm person. So I'm and people have told me I'm very approachable and stuff like that. So and I always try to make
toast
sure
marshmallows on her. Anyway, that was my bad joke.
Huh?
I said we toast marshmallows on you.
Yes, I'm very toasty. But I mean, I generally just try to, just try to be as open and welcoming as possible whenever I meet anybody. So it's just like, but also using my discretion, because at the same time, you just don't know when you're dealing with new people, new personalities, and you're just trying to gauge them off of a few notes of who they are. But overall, you just try to be genuine, and you just try to be smart about it. Because like we've mentioned in previous points, there may be people who don't get social cues, or they don't get that in this. And so and again, that goes back to setting boundaries, being able to set appropriate boundaries between yourself and your fan base. I think that's like another healthy way, because the real ones will respect those boundaries, they'll be like, you know what, exactly. That's cool. It's just like when people need to say, when a creator goes, I need to take a day to recover because I'm not feeling well, or if something happened, I won't be here for a couple days, so hang tight, I'll be back. And so the real ones will be like, take your time, take care of whatever you need, we'll be here when you get back. Those are the real fans, the real true, VIPs, MVPs.
You're going to say OTPs, awesome. I'm just like, no, that's not the right one.
No, not the OTPs. No. The very important people and the most valued people are the ones that will respect those boundaries. So as long as you can kind of set those, or at least even just like put it forward saying like, the buck stops at this point for me, the real fans will respect that. And you got to filter. Yeah. You may have to act as a filter, unfortunately, to get to that, but hopefully for the most part people won't be a pain about it. So
it's sort of like you set the example in a way, like how like as we said at the beginning, you set the example of how fans interact with you. If you set your boundaries in a way that's respectful of everybody else, but is like firm, people will respect that, and they'll also extend the same thing to you. So ultimately it can only really lead to a healthy relationship. And then the other thing is, and I think this is just important of any relationship, is you have to communicate. Because I feel like from both creators and audiences think the other person should know some things. So you should always communicate and assume that everybody isn't a mind reader. And then also if you communicate, then you have a fail-safe. You can be like, hey, I just told you this. So if somebody's disrespecting you, could be like, hey, you didn't, you ignored all of my social cues, and when I directly addressed it with you, you didn't pay attention, so that's not cool. Whereas, for example, you can have somebody who misses social cues, and maybe if you had communicated with them, they might have gotten better, or they might have like understood.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like always going into it's always going into interactions. Obviously, again, like Lauren said, it is like gauging them, but always going with the best intention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. I was gonna make a point, but I forgot it. So let me think. Let me think for a sec. Anyway, my also point too is I've mentioned this before, but especially now that COVID's ending, and people like me do a lot of conventions where you get to meet X person in person or whatever. Like it's also a very different relationship when you are in person, because normally, if the person's feeling like it, they'll be fine, they'll be warm, they can take a picture, you can get commissions, whatever you want out of the convention, or if they're doing whatever. But my point being is, like, also be aware of those limitations when someone's in person, especially if they are working, which either means not working, not making money, but like doing panels. There's a lot of things that they're committing to at the convention, because not with YouTube, especially nerdy YouTubers like me, or just any content creator in general. Not only do we generally have a lot of anxiety, too, don't worry, we have anxiety too, but sometimes we're not the best at hiding our limitations, or we have to go away, or like we want to go take a nap, or whatever, and try to make sure that, like, you can't help this obviously, but you want to try to make sure that if you have to say your boundaries, or say like, hey, well, I'm actually heading out for lunch, I'll be back this time or whatever, people are not taking it personally too, which is always
also,
like a fear.
Rule of thumb. Yeah, also rule of thumb. Don't stalk people at conventions, please. Just, I know if you're following them to like a panel or something, yeah, okay, fine. But if they're going to, like, let's say, going to dinner, and you're going to go, and let's say you're a creator, and you're going with other creators to a dinner.
Oh my God, yes.
Other people and fans try to invite themselves to said dinner, which is just supposed to be between friends. Please respect the space. If you were invited personally, that's your only excuse. But don't invite yourself. Don't stalk. Just don't do the kind of stuff, like, just because people are popular or YouTube celebrities, again, that doesn't mean you treat them differently because of that. Don't think that they are not human. If you as a human would be terrified at the prospect of somebody following you, then consider how they feel. Even if they're a person that is 7 feet tall, and you think, oh, they wouldn't be intimidated by little, 5-foot me or whatever. But no, they still need space respected, So it's like, just be a decent person, respect people's boundaries, online and offline and in person.
It's kind of like just read the room as well, because I remember, when I was in BronyCon last year, no, not last year, I wish, last year, the last one, you can tell when people, like, there are moments where content creators or where people are open for fans being there and following them. So it's basically just read the room and see how everybody else is acting, because we also, like, might be me, but I also don't want to, like, be like, oh no, you can never speak to me, for I am.
How dare you? How dare you?
We're
plebeian.
definitely not saying that. It's just, like you said, read the room. It's exactly. Acknowledging. It's like, we want to be able to chill and hang out with you and converse with you and be friends. That'd be awesome. You just gotta respect the boundaries first before you can say we have established ourselves as friends. So it's like how you build up any friendship. Like, you gotta establish something first and actually be real about it, because otherwise, if it's just based off of you following somebody on a YouTube channel without any other interaction besides that, yeah, we don't know who you are, and we would like to get to know you if we're vibing and go, yeah, let's be friends, right? Otherwise, yeah, we'll be cool with each other, but don't assume automatically that means it's like, okay, you can, that you're automatically invited to dinners at the conventions and stuff like that, unless you're like...
I was going to say, don't assume you can just sit behind someone's table or booth because you talk to them for 10 minutes. I've had that happen before, and I'm just like, please go away, I'm trying to draw.
Yeah, fortunately that never happened with tables I've been to or been at, but I have heard it happen and seen it happen to other tables, and I'm like, dude, come on. Would you do this to any other convention? Would you go to Comic-Con and sit behind somebody else's booth at like one of the biggest conventions in the world? Would you do that too? Like, I didn't think so.
I think also, and then maybe we should like also talk about kind of like from the creator side. Because the big thing is like, you should not let it get to your head.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's like not fair for the fans. Mm-hmm. So basically, yeah, it's just not, don't let it get to your head. Don't let it like, if you're lucky enough to have fans, that is still something really cool and privileged in a way. You have somebody who like admires what you do, and you have to like also be aware of that. Mm-hmm. I think those kind of relationships could have more bad stuff happen online, not really much at cons.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's easier to kind of just assume that, the vocal minority is the majority because that's what you're seeing too. Mm-hmm. But the majority of the majority of people, sometimes they just don't interact with your content, or they just don't watch every video you make, but they're still there, like, I think. So it's hard to kind of remember that sometimes, I guess. But I was just going to give a few more examples of some bad manners that you shouldn't do. The first one is something I was a witness to, but one of the people I know complained that they met Markiplier one time, and Markiplier was rude to them or something like that. And that always frustrated me because, like, if you're Markiplier, especially, if you're someone who's doing a lot of things at conventions, then you're probably gonna be tired sometimes, and you're not gonna be in the mood to be great to everyone all the time forever.
Yeah.
So that rudeness was probably just a
rough
not
day.
Related to them. Like, I will be the first to say that, especially after a certain point, I will get grumpy as shit at cons because you're working long hours, especially if you have a table. And I have to.
You're tired. You're hungry.
You have to get your friends to get you food because you can't leave the table because you got commissions. Man, I miss cons. But anyway, and then also like new factor came into play, or new factor enters the field. Whatever, I don't know. So I have to keep in mind my PTSD issues. So not that they come up that often. But, again, that ties to negative experiences. If you have someone who is a butthole and they trigger you, then you have to be like, okay, well, I got to go away for like an hour and cry and then come back. That happened one time when I was doing a convention with Chrissy, which is fun times. But, it's not all you guys. It's just
it's just
everyone has
like
limitations. Okay, that's all I wanted to say about
minority. It's the vocal minority, but yeah, it's and again, we want to be, and actually speaking from somebody who met Markiplier once, and he was actually a truly genuine, really nice guy. That he was, if you want to look up the video, it was the Arrow Dodge challenge from 2016. If anybody wants to look that up, I was actually in one of his videos. Huh?
What's an Arrow Dodge?
Arrow Dodge. It was just when they were he had fans meet up at different locations to do different like sport games to record for the channel. And because he wanted to record fan interactions and stuff. And I did get to meet him back in 2016 because he was in my neighborhood at the time, and he was doing like a Nerf arrow shooting thing. So it was almost like he had his friends with him, and you had to try to shoot them with arrows, like Nerf arrows, like the foam ones. So I got to be in the video for that. And at the end of all the recording and stuff, he said, now I just, if everybody could line up, I want to make sure that because I have to go film at like 2 other locations today, but at the same time, you all came out here and I can't thank you enough for coming out here. If you could all line up, I want to get to the chance to meet with each and every one of you before I have to go.
Oh, that's nice.
He literally did that. He didn't have to do it.
How many people were there?
I want to say of the participants, I would say there were about maybe 50 people.
Oh,
and
wow.
And then, yeah, I think he managed to fit about 50 people in because it was different rounds with different members getting shot at with arrows. And then, and even at one point, and you'll see it in the video, and I knew the moment it happened, I'm like, this is going to be the landmark moment in the video. This little girl showed up from like the nearby, there was like a little like kids museum nearby, and she had just come from there. And so it was with her and her mom and like I think her baby sister, and she was just like, I watch your videos, and she was like 4. She was the cutest thing, and
Doesn't he curse in his videos though?
Huh?
Doesn't he curse in his videos though?
I think it was more like she watched whatever tame ones because he doesn't curse in every video, and plus that was also I think at the time when they were implementing more of the censoring of stuff, so he couldn't swear in his videos.
Okay.
But even then, he doesn't swear in every video. But it was really cute that he went over, knelt down to her, and like got to speak with her before he even headed out, and he had her participate in one of the arrow dodge things too. He said, I want you to take this arrow and I want you to run up to Ethan and hit him with it. Like, you know, and it was really cute. So you can look that up on YouTube, but that's an example of saying like, and he was just, if he was a mean guy, he would have not taken the initiative, be like, I want to meet with each and every one of you because, you know, I couldn't have done this without you guys. So thank you so much for showing up. And I want to be able to, you know, meet with you, take pictures, whatever I can, but I want to be able to do this before I have to go. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he was cool. And he did also the, can I have an arm around you for a picture thing. Mm-hmm. So real MVP.
Real classy, classy guy.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm talked out. Did you guys have any other points you wanted to bring up?
No, I think respect each other, people.
I will also add, make sure you communicate directly in a way that's, like, not hurtful, because I have had, not only people that I don't know, but, like, contacts in general, like, assume things, and they don't bring it up to me directly, and I hear, like, backhand information from, like, third parties, and it really, really upsets me, and I won't name the people that are doing this, but, like, they're adults, they should know better to do this, but, like, you know, it's, have direct communication is always important. You know, unless you're, like, don't do it in a mean way, just do it in a way that's, direct, obviously. Productive, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Or constructive, rather.
Constructive, yeah. You know, generally positive.
Yeah, because what we want to do is we want to keep things chill. We want to just vibe. So
I want to make friends.
Yeah,
I want to get a job.
That's why I'm literally here to just have a good time and meet cool people. So, I mean, I'm not here to do much besides that. And I'm like, if you go out with that simple mindset and approach, then yeah, it's like, you know, it does help with things rather than going out and, because there's some people that literally go out and just want to start a fight. And I'm like, why? This isn't, the world isn't your punching bag, because there's some people that are in the middle of it going, why? I just want to have a good time.
I came out here and I'm feeling so attacked.
Exactly.
And, you know, the other thing too is, like, things slide off your back. Like, if I, like, I don't know, I don't think most people won't ever be in the situation, but, like, if you do, like, something really bad and I'm like, hey guy, not cool. You know, if you come up later and, like, apologize, like, I won't think any, like, you know, that's fine. Like, all you gotta do is you just gotta genuinely apologize if someone is, calls you out in your shit and improve, and that's hopefully the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's like, I think rule of thumb for both sides, for creators and for their fandoms, for their fan bases, I should say. Just be nice to each other, be respectful, respect boundaries, respect each other. I mean, that's. I mean, I know it sounds like it's common knowledge, common sense, but it doesn't hurt to drill it even more, because you just sometimes you need the reminder that, again, like we pointed out, that we're all people at the end of the day. So it's like, and we're all people that, like, we may have certain fears and triggers and all that kind of stuff. So you just got to respect that.
Yeah. Just vibe.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can
think that's
wrap.
it.
So, Kat, where can people find you if people want to stalk you, but in a way that's socially appropriate?
I'm usually active, mostly. I say active, but not really. But the best way to find me is on my Twitter, which is Monochromatic, which I guess maybe we can link it. It's
Yeah, it'll be
I'll
linked,
just
but you can
it'll
like.
be linked. That's where you can find me, or on if you're into MLP fanfiction, on fanfiction as Monochromatic. But
And
mostly
you have books?
Twitter's the safest. Oh, I do have books.
You're a book author now.
Well, I don't know if I'm a book author. Well, technically, yes, but basically, I'm very lucky that this really cool group of fans really liked my fanfiction, and they were like, "Hey, can we like print it out like a real book?" And I was like, "Holy cow, yes!" And then they did it, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm a real writer now."
Yeah, they look gorgeous. Those covers,
Honestly,
gorgeous.
I'm not gonna lie, when they sent it over and I was like looking at them and they have like full art and everything, I was like, oh my god, I wrote this? Wow. Oh. So if you're into pony fiction, be sure to check those out. And if not, it's okay. And also I have a webcomic that's starting soon. I'm very excited.
Oh yeah,
about it.
talk about that.
I have this webcomic. It's called The Last Resort. It's still not out yet, but I'm incapable of waiting, so I already started posting content and making newsletters, because overcommitting is my thing, I guess. And then, so it's about these two living women that get hired to work at a hotel in the afterlife. And it's, if I could, I would sit down and tell you the entire plot, but my partners would be mad at me, so I won't. But it'll be cool, so we're hoping to launch soon. So be on the lookout for that, and eventually, once we become a huge hit animated series with Netflix or whatever, you'll be able to be like, oh, I remember when she's talked about that in that one podcast like 10 years ago. So, see? It'll be cool. Cool time.
There. It's a little time capsule moment.
And I think that's it.
Okay. So I'm KP, in case you didn't know that already. I guess, please subscribe and turn notifications on to the main channel. We work hard, and I was really sad. I was talking the other days. I made a TikTok mostly to advertise the main channel, to put like little clips of the jokes and stuff like that. And one of the TikToks got more views than our Anastasia video, which we spent like 3 weeks on. It's fine. But, like, we're still in a weird place, so any support helps. Tell your mom, my grandma, my 91-year-old grandma watches my videos, so, like, there you go. That's what I'm working with. She tells me, she's like, oh, I watch your videos when they're on the YouTube, and I'm like, thanks, Grandma. So, and then I'll send her fun doodles of me that, like, little fan arts, and then, that's my relationship with my grandma. And my Twitter is at I love KP a lot. Again, if you didn't know that, the podcast Twitter is at the KP podcast, because Animation Kimmunication was taken. No, it was too long. That's probably it. And then, Lauren, what are your socials?
Pretty much you can just, since I thrive off of there, is the Abby Rohde on Twitter. And
expect a lot of Lupin art.
Yes, lots of it. Like if you're in that fan space, then like and you were wondering what I sounded like and you didn't know what my voice sounded like until this point, then congratulations, you found me. But yeah, and I post doodles there, and occasional colored piece, but I am trying to build myself up to some more intensive pieces, trying to better myself, maybe even get into some animatic stuff down the line, which would be really awesome because I really want to build up an animatic portfolio, which would be nice. So
yeah, that's the mood. Animatics are hard though; they take a long time.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that's it. Usually the podcast comes out on Wednesdays if we record it. But we're probably gonna the next couple episodes will probably be fine because we already have our next guest scheduled, and then we have a one for another time that we'll get to. So we'll probably be fine for the next couple of weeks if you're listening to this when it just came out. So if not, go catch up or whatever you're doing. It's COVID. It's still COVID. You don't have anything to do. Don't lie to me. So. Okay. Bye everyone. See you next time, or see you in the past, I guess, if you're time traveling and watching old episodes, listening to old episodes, whatever.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh yeah, we
This was a
forgot
really
about
good
that.
conversation.
Thanks for letting you be stolen. Okay.
Good night.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Communication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Kimmunication.